What's going on, everyone? Chris from Pickdawgz.com here with your college football breakdown for week 6. We're going to be talking about 10 games going down on Saturday, October 5th, 2024. If you like this content, make sure you smash that thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you let me know your college football picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets of games that I love, including my platinum play, head to Pickdawgz.com, click the premium picks tab at the top of the page. Had a great college football weekend last week, hoping to build on that going into this one. We also had a nice bounce back week on the breakdown. It was a tough week in week 4, but we got it back on track in week 5, and I think we're ready to make some more money. Got some great matchups on the board. Some teams on a bye week, but still plenty of money to be made. So why wait any longer? What do you guys say? Let's get into it. Our first game takes us to Beaver Stadium for a matchup between Penn State and UCLA. This one's going down at 12 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Penn State a hefty favorite at home, and this one total set at 46. And Penn State a favorite at home, big favorite at home for good reason. I mean, the Nittany Lions really have shown no signs of letting up. They've been routing everybody for the most part. They did have that close call against Bowling Green, and really cut down the defensive effort against Illinois, just stifled the Fighting Illini in that one. But this is a bit of a tricky number because I think at this number, even though it's dipped under 4 touchdowns, it's been fluctuating around 27.5, 28, even up to 28.5. I think this could be asking for a backdoor cover, in all honesty. I could easily see something like 41-14, where Penn State absolutely runs all over them, and UCLA does just enough, and maybe a garbage possession to be able to chip into the total. But that's why I like the over 46 here. I just think this is one of those games where, it just makes more sense for me to take the over 46, just in case, like I said, you do get that backdoor action from UCLA, or if Penn State covers this number on their own. That would not surprise me if they got to 46 points single-handedly, or even won this game like 48-0. But I think that the over 46 is the way to go rather than trust Penn State, because UCLA has had a tendency to be a little bit pesky. Look at their last couple games, catching big numbers. Lost by 17 on the road at LSU, catching 21. They were catching 23.5 against a solid Oregon team last week. Lost by 21. So I'm going to go with the over 46 in this one. Now we're heading to Ohio Stadium for a matchup between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Ohio State laying 19.5, total set at 45. This one's going to be going down on CBS at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And when I was doing this game with Ron Romanelli on our college football show earlier in the week, I was initially looking at the over, because I do think that there is something to be said for Iowa and having some semblance of a passing attack, and Iowa overs. I said then, if you told me that Iowa overs would be 4-0 at this point in the season when there were so many low scoring games last year, I might have thought you were crazy. But I mean, it's kind of just how it's shaken out this season. But that being said, the more and more I look at it, the more and more I think I'm looking at taking Ohio State here, because the thing with Ohio State, they've historically had Iowa's number 10-5-1 against the number in the last 16 meetings against the Hawkeyes, and this has just been a matchup that Iowa's struggling. I mean, the 3 times they faced ranked opponents last year, they were shut out. Now again, they have a better offense that they had all of last season, but I still think Ohio State's just too much here. This is an Ohio State team that just excels at passing the football, airing it out, and they also like to run the football as well. Now, while the run defense for Iowa could be a problem for Ohio State, this is an abnormally, average Iowa pass defense, 70th against the pass. They're just outside the top 50 in terms of yards per completion and yards per attempt. I think this is one of those games where Ohio State just starts to pull away as the game goes on, wins this one by 3 touchdowns. I'm going to go with Ohio State laying the points. Now we head to Sanford Stadium for an SEC tilt between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Auburn Tigers. This one's going down at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Georgia, 24-point favorite, total set at 52. And, I can understand the point to be made for Auburn here with the points. Is a big number for Georgia to be laying after such an emotional game, that rally from, such a huge deficit against Alabama, to come back and take the lead after being down 30-7 going into the half. You take the lead with 2:31 to go, and then one play, you're all of a sudden back behind Alabama, and you had that drive end in the interception in the end zone from the 20. But I think for Auburn, this is simply a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I just think that Georgia is going to come out here, guns blazing. I think Kirby Smart is going to be just as pissed off with his team as he was probably when they were down 30-7. And I think this is, like I said, just wrong place, wrong time for Auburn, who just for me doesn't have the consistent enough quarterback play to be able to compete with Georgia here. Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown, neither one of them can find the offense and the rhythm consistently enough to be able to trust them going forward against a quality opponent. And like I said, I think this is just one of those games where Georgia puts their foot down and just doesn't let up off the gas here. I'm going to go with Georgia in a statement bounce back performance. Now we head to the other side of that marquee matchup from last week. We've got Alabama heading to Tennessee to take on Vanderbilt. This one's going to be going down at 4:15 p.m. Eastern, and this one's going to be on the SEC network. Alabama laying a hefty number themselves, 22.5, total set at 55.5. And it may not be a popular opinion here, but I'm going to take a shot here on Vanderbilt and the points because I think that this is just, I think, a Vanderbilt spot. We talk about, the bounce back for Georgia and how some people could clamor for a letdown. I think this is a letdown for Alabama in this game. I'm not saying Alabama won't win this game by margin, but 22.5 is a little bit of a funky number, and I could easily see Alabama winning this one something like 38-17, and, Vandy being another one of those teams that just sneaks in the back door and gets the cover here. I'm not trying to pick a number that lands right on 55, but I think that's just what it could be here. And, the thing with Alabama is that they've owned Vanderbilt. They've only faced 3 times since 2010, outscoring Vandy 148-3. But all 3 of those games were with Nick Saban in charge. We'll have to see how Kalen DeBoer kind of handles this spot. And I know in the past he's been a guy that keeps his foot on the gas. He did it with Washington last year against teams like Boise State. But I think that was a huge win for Alabama, a roller coaster of emotions going from being up 30-7, like we mentioned, to trailing, then having the big play to win yourself the game, and now having to go take on Vanderbilt on the road. Just feels like a bit of a sleepier spot to me where, maybe you don't get a full effort from Alabama here where they do enough to win comfortably, but 22.5 feels like a little bit much for me. So give me Vandy in the points. Now we head to Corvallis for a matchup between the Oregon State Beavers and the Colorado State Rams. This one's going down at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on the CW. Oregon State laying 11, total set at 48.5. And admittedly, these were 2 teams that I had completely mixed up in the offseason coming into this year. I thought Colorado State was going to show signs of improvement in the Mountain West. I thought Oregon State had just gone through so much turnover that it was going to be hard for them to really, feel good about competing in the now defunct Pac-12 that may be getting back together, but who knows? But even then, have trouble, carrying over into 2024. But so far, Oregon State 3-1 straight up, 2-2 against the number. And the thing is, when they've been winning by margin. They beat Idaho State, okay, but they beat San Diego State on the road. They shut them out 21-0. Beat Purdue at home 38-21. The only loss they have was that blowout loss at home to Oregon, which stings, but Oregon's starting to look like a really, really solid team. While Colorado State has had trouble really, building an identity. Sure, you beat UTEP in Northern Colorado. That's all well and good, but you've got blitzed by the likes of Texas and Colorado. And I do feel that Oregon State is closer to what we've seen with Colorado than I do think that they are to UTEP or Northern Colorado. And this Colorado State offense has just had trouble, like I said, establishing an identity. Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, great quarterback, but this is a Colorado State team that's 119th in passing, middle of the table in terms of rushing the football, and maybe they can take advantage of Oregon State's run defense, but Corvallis is a tough place to go on the road and win, and I think Oregon State can do a lot here against this porous Colorado State defense. And like I said, I just think this one's all Colorado State. I think they win this one again with some margin behind them as well. I'm going to take Oregon State laying the 11 points. Now we head to the blue turf at Albertson Stadium for a matchup between Boise State and Utah State. This one's going down at 7 p.m. Eastern on FS2. Boise State a 27-point favorite here, total set at 66. I get why this line is where it is because Boise State historically has flat out owned Utah State. They are 20-1 straight up in the last 21 meetings, 17-3-1 against the spread in those 21 games since 1998. They've won and covered 7 in a row. And Yeah, this is a Utah State team that's just been porous defensively, but let's not forget that, Boise State has been as well. I mean, this is a Boise State team that got 45 points put up on them by Georgia Southern. They gave up 37 to Oregon. So while I do lean towards Boise State, I just don't have a great feeling about laying this number. And there's always there's always the possibility that Utah State puts up a clunker like they did against USC, losing that game 48-0. So rather than worry about them to try to contribute to a total of 66, I'm going to go with the Boise State team total over. Right now it's hanging around 44.5, and that sounds like a ton. But when you can give up 45 points to Temple, that you can definitely give up 44.5 to Boise State and Ashton Jeanty, who looks like he's on pace for a Heisman campaign. I just sprinkled on Jeanty to win the Heisman at plus 1,000. But, Boise State, this is, the third most efficient rushing offense in the country. They lead the country in yards per carry. I think Jeanty's averaging over 10 yards per carry, going up against the 115th ranked rush defense. We're at a point where Jeanty's touchdown props, for him to have 3+ touchdowns, you're still laying juice. That's how dominant he has been. I think how dominant he will be in this matchup. I think Boise State's team total over is the way to go here. Like I said, it's hanging around 44.5, 45. So give me Boise State's team total over. Now we're heading to the Swamp at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. This one's going down on SEC Network between Florida and UCF. UCF laying 3, total set at 61.5. And, this is going to be an interesting matchup. I think it's going to be one of the more entertaining matchups of the primetime slot on Saturday's card, with UCF trying to bounce back after getting torched by Colorado, while Florida beat up on Mississippi State. But really, what does that say about Mississippi State? Not a whole lot. Does it give me real assurance with Florida? No, but I will say I think this game has track meet written all over it. Teams have been running the football on Florida. Teams have rushed for almost 45 attempts per game on the Gators. Florida 108th in rush defense. You're going up against a UCF team that runs the ball at the third highest rate in terms of rush attempts per game in the country. They're second in rushing yards per game, just outside the top 10 in yards per carry. So would it surprise me if UCF broke off multiple chunk runs in this game? Absolutely not. But on the other side, you got UCF's defense. It's great against the run, but not very good against the pass. 108th defending the pass, 125th in completions allowed per game, 120th in completion percentage allowed. And while Florida's quarterback numbers don't blow anybody away, Graham Mertz, for as much as I've crapped on him in years past, has been extremely efficient. Look at last week against Mississippi State. 19 of 21, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I get it. It was Mississippi State, but you just had Shedeur Sanders, just absolutely light up this UCF defense. And I think Florida, with any sort of competent quarterback play, could put up numbers of their own here. I think this is one of those games that's headed for something like 34-31 or 35-28, something like that. So I got to go with the over here. I think, like I said, track meet all day in this one. Lots of points being scored. Give me the over. Now we head to Bobby Dodd Stadium for a matchup between Georgia Tech and Duke. This one's going down at 8 p.m. Eastern on ACC Network. Georgia Tech, a 9.5-point favorite at home here. Total set at 55. And I was trying to make sense of it from a Georgia Tech perspective. I mean, you look at their schedule, they would have definitely had the tougher schedule side by side when you look at these two teams. And, Georgia Tech at home this season, 3-0, both straight up and against the number. However, I will say I haven't loved what I've seen from Georgia Tech against teams with a pulse in the last couple games. They lost to Syracuse on the road and, lost to Louisville last time out, 31-19. I was on Georgia Tech in that game, and, they kind of let it get away from them in the fourth quarter. They had it, within a touchdown and even within 5 points and just could not get any closer. They had a field goal blocked, and that was what ended up being the difference. Now, granted, Georgia Tech's had an extra week to prepare for this game, and Duke coming off of an emotional 1-point win over their rival in North Carolina. But for me, that's not enough to give up 9.5 points here to a Blue Devils team I think matches up really well with Georgia Tech. It's a Georgia Tech team that, is balanced in terms of running the football and passing it. They're 90th in rushing attempts per game, 71st in passing attempts. But this is a top 20 Duke pass defense. They're middle of the road against the rush, while, Georgia's rushing offense hasn't necessarily blown anybody away. And Duke, I like what I've seen from Malik Murphy at quarterback, and I think he can do enough here to keep this one within a touchdown. I like Duke with the points when it was still hanging around 7.5. So to get it, if we can get it up around double digits, I'm loving Duke in this spot. So I'm going to take Duke here plus the 9.5. Now we head to Cal Memorial Stadium where the Cal Golden Bears take on the Miami Hurricanes. So it's going down at 10:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Miami laying 10.5, total set at 55. And if you're a Miami fan, you had to be sweating a little bit. You could take some deep breaths now. They got past Virginia Tech 38-34. But I'll tell you, Miami did not make it look easy on themselves. And, we were all kind of sitting here wondering if Miami was going to have a clunker. I'll admit, I was on Miami in that game because I haven't been sold on Virginia Tech this season. But the Hokies definitely put a scare into Miami in that one. But the thing that, I got to look at here is that this is just a really, really tough travel spot for Miami. And we kind of expected it with the additions to the ACC this season, Stanford, Cal, where there were going to be these cross-country travel spots for the OG ACC members. And, we're starting to see that it's going to be a tricky spot. Now, granted, there's an extra day of rest for Miami, involved, and you still have to travel. It's fine. It's still a cross-country road trip against a Cal team that still plays some decent defense. I mean, even in their losses this season, they haven't allowed more than 14 points. Now, granted, they're probably going to give up a few more than 14 here. But is it enough for me to lay 10.5? I'm not 100% sure because I think that Cal's going to just try to muck this game up. And this line just looks really funky. I'm going to go with the under 55 because even if this isn't a funky line and, they're just trying to, drum up some interest and, get some eyes on this game. If Miami wins, I can see them winning a blowout and, like a 31-14, 31-10 kind of game. But I could also see it being, just another ugly matchup. So I just feel like the under 55 is the way to go. This is just for people that kind of want to have some eyes on the nighttime games on Saturday night. And our final game on Saturday's card is the final game on the board for Saturday as well, as you've got Texas Tech heading to Tucson to take on the Arizona Wildcats. This one's going off at 11 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Arizona laying 6, total set at 64. And, Arizona coming in off that big road win over Utah. Again, admittedly, I was on Utah in that one because for me, I've just been under the belief, and it's paid off more often than not the last couple of years, that Rice Eccles is a place that, offensive teams go to struggle. And I thought they would, but it just turns out that, Arizona, while they didn't have their best offensive game, the defense stepped up and kept Utah in check. Utah, again, trying to, play the mind games with Cam Rising. And I think I'm done with Utah at that point. But now they have a stiff test here in Texas Tech that's really been able to carry their offense, with pride. Now, granted, Texas Tech did struggle in their lone road game of the season. They lost 37-16 to Washington State. But since then, Texas Tech has been on a roll. They put up 66 against North Texas, 30 against Arizona State, 44 against Cincinnati. And I think this is going to be a track meet as well. This is a Texas Tech team that loves to pass the football, top 5 in pass attempts per game. They're just outside the top 15 in passing yards per game against a middle-of-the-road Arizona defense that, has had issues stopping the pass. They have issues stopping the run. But I also think that, Arizona's going to be able to put up some points against Texas Tech's defense. Texas Tech 125th nationally in total defense, 121st in yards per play allowed, third worst team against the pass in the country, which should be music to the ears of Noah Fafita and Tetaroa McMillan, who are probably going to look to have another big game here. I think in the end, I like the over 64 the most here, but I would also lean towards Texas Tech plus the 6. I do think the Red Raiders have the offense to hang around in this game. Maybe it's a 38-34 kind of game, but either way, give me the over 64, would lean towards Texas Tech plus 6. That's it. That's your college football breakdown for Saturday, October 5th, 2024. Again, if you like this content, make sure you smash that thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and let me know in the comments section what your college football picks are for this week. Did you agree with mine? Did you not agree? Let's hash it out. Let's talk about it. But if you're looking for my best bets on the board, the games that I absolutely love, head to pickdawgz.com, click the premium picks tab at the top of the page. You can find my platinum play, my best bet on the board for the entire day. These are the times where you want to hop on long term because those daily passes, we can make you money that way. But the long term passes, with me at least, I can only speak for myself, but those 3 and 7 day passes are actually cheaper on Saturday than buying each of Saturday's daily packages individually, and it'll include Sunday's NFL as well. NHL is on the horizon. It's starting up this week. You still have some MLB, still got some WNBA thrown in there. So definitely the best value is to hop on something long-term at Pickdawgz Premium. But again, I appreciate each and every one of you joining me this week. Let's again crush the books, hit them hard. Let's make some money.